Now it is my pleasure to introduce our main speaker for tonight, Wayne B. from LA.
Is this being recorded? Shoot. I can't say what I was going to say about Patrick now. My name's Wayne Butler. I'm an alcoholic. So good to be here. Good to be sober. I love AA. Thanks, Patrick, for the invite. And thank you, Alec, for leading the meeting. And thanks, Joel. Joel has been so hospitable to me, to house me, feed me, and his wonderful wife. It's really heartwarming to be accepted in as though I actually have respect. My sponsor told people to always hold my hands in prayer so they know where they were. He was one of them. Welcome, newcomers. Eric, well done, Grasshopper. I could just say ditto to the original preamble and sit down. I think, in my opinion, all meetings should be opened with that preamble because it states, in my opinion, the essence of this life-giving program. And I don't ever want to forget that. I absolutely love AA with every fiber of my being. I sometimes don't think I deserve this, but the God of my understanding says differently. That sometimes I question that because I know where I came from. I want to, Patrick and I have known each other for 30 years. He's a bandit, I have to tell you the truth. Full transparency. Clancy was thrown out of the 26th and Broadway meeting in Santa Monica at one time. Me and Patrick have had more group conferences called on us than that. I don't know if we should be proud of that, but it sure was a lesson, wasn't it? I've been arrested 9 times. I'll get that out of the way. I've been arrested 9 times, but that doesn't make you alcoholic. I was only drinking 2 times. The other 7 times I was arrested in meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous. Now, I didn't know they could do that. There was this one time I was being arrested in a meeting, and I yelled out, "You're breaking tradition." They didn't seem to care. Another time, my self-appointed sponsor got me to sit in the middle of the boat. It was a real wonky boat, much like this one. And I'm sitting in the middle of the room, speaker speaking. 2 sheriff's deputies show up at the door, and they're looking in the room. And you know how we are. Everybody turns around and sees what's going on. And they're looking at just me. And they come in, they head for me. They said, "Stand up." I stood up, and they got 1 handcuff on me. Now, I don't know how any of you respond to having a handcuff put you on you, but the fight was on. And I want to thank my home group for moving out of the way, giving them room to work. And they finally got me handcuffed. They are literally on each shoulder dragging me out of that meeting. And as I'm being drugged through the door, there's a newcomer holding the door open. And as I am drugged by, he goes like this, "Keep coming back." So that's kind of what you're dealing with tonight. My sobriety date is the 8th of November, 1977. I've had no booze, pills, powders, potions, or lotions that affect my emotions from that day to this. I do have a history of dating mind and mood altering women. That's not sexist, that's just my preference. And my sponsors threatened me with another 12-step program, so I knocked that crap out. Found out when they didn't date me, I solved their problem too. It's an interesting dynamic we've got here. I love to drink. I do, I love it. Some days I miss Budweiser, even today. I'm a Bud man. If you ever come to California, to Santa Monica, California, and you go on the 405 out to the valley, and just as you get over the hill at the bottom, there's a 101 freeway going east and west. And just as you get past that at the Roscoe Boulevard exit on the west side, there's an Anheuser-Busch brewery. I swear to God, when I drive by there, I slow down, have a moment of silence. Some people say I have an alcoholic mind. Nope. I just love Budweiser and fine wine. How many of you remember Ripple? Now, if you're under 45, don't raise your hand because we all know you're lying because they shut that chemical plant down. I also like Boone's Farm Strawberry Hill. Now, I'll tell you why. When I puke, it looks like I'm bleeding internally. And I tell people I'm dying from stomach cancer so I can get free drinks. I also like Mad Dog Deucey Deucey Orange. Thunderbird, Cisco, and Night Train were my drinks of choice. No corks. That doesn't make me alcoholic. Now, the civilians out there, they think that makes you alcoholic. But that is what makes me alcoholic. And I was baffled. You know, Bill wrote in how, and I love how you folks pay attention to our literature, our approved literature. You're not going to get a AAA talk tonight. AA. I'm an AA'er. I'm a hardcore AA'er. I don't bring nothing in from out there to the best of my human ability because there's so much of it, in my opinion, permeating our society that newcomers won't know what to think when they read our book. So I like to stick to that when I'm being asked to share in Alcoholics Anonymous because I don't want to lead any of you newcomers astray. I want you to understand that my miracle came through the process of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I didn't know that's what they were doing for me when they started sponsoring me. I didn't even know what an alcoholic was. Did you? I didn't know. And Bill wrote in How It Works, alcohol. And I want you to notice he didn't use the word disease. He used the word alcohol. Cunning, baffling, and powerful. I understand that line. I know just enough science to give people a headache and get myself drunk. But I know the science of ethanol alcohol. And here's what baffled me, and perhaps it might be why it baffled some of you, is I know scientifically alcohol is not addictive by nature. Period. Fact. 9 out of 10 people can drink it safely. That's baffling to me because I'll sit there at Liar's Oasis and I'll drink 3 or 4 Budweisers and call my wife and say I'm coming home. But I didn't mean next week. Because something happens to me that's unusual when I take a few drinks. And I have what's called an unnatural reaction, which is an allergy. If you look up allergy, it's an abnormal reaction to. It's an allergy. And I have an abnormal reaction to alcohol. I'll bet many of you did too. In other words, when I take a few drinks, I get so good looking, I can't stand it. I'm a senior in high school. I've been shielded from real world. In 8th grade, they gave me an IQ test because I was acting peculiar. I'm biting crayons, eating pencils. I'm the kid that wore a helmet and didn't ride a bike. I'd get up out of my chair for no good reason and go headfirst into the wall just because it was there. So in 8th grade, they gave me an IQ test. Now, how many of you have had the IQ test? Seriously, how many of you taken the IQ test? If I'm wrong, feel free to call me out. You score 100, you're really smart. You score a 120, you're borderline genius. You score a 150 or above, there's an organization called Mensa that will recruit you to come sit in rooms and think for people that'll pay you. And by the way, I've heard in AA we're above average intelligent. I've been doing this for over 46 years, one day at a time. Mensa has never came to any AA meeting I've been. I just not to disappoint anybody. I scored a 57, and I didn't cheat. I thought I did pretty good, Patrick. I got diagnosed mentally retarded. Not gifted, not special ed, retarded. And we, in fact, rode on a short bus. And I was shielded from school. I was protected from the bullies. And back then, I needed protection because I seemed to have been born scared. I seemed to have been born different. I've always felt separate, different, and alone. Anybody else? Like I don't fit in, I don't belong. And there's no reason for it yet. When I did my 4th step and I did exactly what the book said. I went back as far as memory would take me. And I found that as far as memory would take me, I have always felt separate, different, and alone, even in my own family. That doesn't make me alcoholic, but it's going to play a part in alcoholism that I didn't know about. And so being diagnosed, they didn't ask me what my home life was like. They didn't know about that alcoholic father and that enabling mom. They didn't ask me about the madness at home because they didn't know in the 1950s anything about that. I'm not blaming, I'm just reporting. You're going to hear some things that might sound like I'm a victim, but folks, in my living experience, victims don't get to stay sober here. And I'm so grateful our 12 steps allowed me to step my way out of victimhood and actually risk going into adulthood. My sponsor actually said that to me. We need to bring a moving van and back it up to your head so that you can get out of victimhood and move into a new location called adulthood. And I hated him. I hated his guts. I used to pray for him and he wouldn't die. I know some of you have met somebody like that in AA. I know you have. I'm never going to drink. Never. I see my dad drink brown whiskey and beat the hell out of my mom. I see my mom drink tequila and she seeks revenge. And that fell on us kids, me, my brother, and my sister. I didn't understand none of that. I just know how many of you saw the movie Saving Private Ryan? Do you remember that scene where Tom Hanks' character, if it's just before he gets shot by the sniper, his hand has a tremor? Do you remember that scene? That's how I was in childhood. I had a constant tremor. I was so afraid all the time. And I had that before the violence befell me. You see, what it seems is Bill was right when he wrote, many of us seem to have been born this way. I believe it's true. I'm not saying born alcoholic, born this way. Neurotic, so to speak. This angst that I don't understand. Before anything happened to me as a kid, I had that. And so I believe, like some of you, I was born with a broken spirit. I believe that. And life compounded the fracture, and then we started blaming life. I didn't have the tools I have today to identify where my real problem came from, that it originated right in here. And science could not disclose that to me. God bless him for trying. But I want to become an alcoholic. Where's that big book? I want to become an alcoholic really quick, if you don't mind. You mind? I want to become because from here on out, if you hear my story, you might think I'm in the wrong program. People have often said they think I am. Do you know, I hope you don't mind if I go program on you. Did you know that Bill devoted 4 chapters to step 1? 4. Now, I may be retarded, according to the teachers. Now, don't be offended by that. I'm not making fun of special needs kids. That's what they called me, and I'm going to be real about it. I did not understand what was wrong with me. But I understood that 4 chapters means step 1 must be important. I've been in all kinds of therapy. I've been therapied till I can't do therapy no more. And for a little while, it would sometimes work. But you know what worked every time? Budweiser. It worked every time. And I didn't even know it was doing that. And I think that's why so many of us die drunk and loaded, is because we don't know, because what Chuck C. talked about, the effect produced by alcohol is unconscious. And that's why Father Dowling called it a spiritual compulsion when I would pick up a drink against my will. A spiritual compulsion. I didn't understand that. And so rather than getting a quick fix method of doing the steps, my sponsor encouraged me to understand what those 4 chapters mean. It means that I need to get a full knowledge of my condition. And Bill actually used those words in the big book. Don't take my word for it. Read your big book tonight. It says, we must get a full knowledge of our condition. And I didn't understand why he would say that. I needed it. I'll tell you why. You'll hear some people, I believe innocently, say time doesn't matter. I think I know what they mean by that. But I want you to know something. Time does matter. And I'll tell you why. I'm so grateful I stayed sober 20 years because I had a life-changing experience. I'm glad I stayed sober 30 years. I had another life-changing experience. And then at 42 years, I had another life-changing experience. Had I not stayed sober consistently, I would have missed all of them. And I didn't have that information to pass on to anybody. But my old timers told me time matters, and they told me why. Now I have living experiential proof that that's true. One day at a time. So if you're new in this room, we have permanent sobriety available here, one day at a time. The only cost is everything. Isn't that great? I know if you're new, you're thinking, I wish he'd shut up. You know, Bill, just as a sidebar, Bill wrote in How It Works. I've heard How It Works read thousands of times. I know you have, Patrick. Almost every meeting I go to in my time, they read How It Works. And I missed it all those years. The answer to why we relapse. There's only one reason. Did you know that? There's only one reason, according to Bill Wilson, that we ever slip. Only one. There's about 1,000 rationalizations behind that one reason. And he wrote it in How It Works, so a knucklehead like me might find it, but I missed it. It had to be pointed out to me. It says, rarely have we seen a person, I beg your pardon, those who do not recover are people who cannot or will not completely give themselves this simple program. The operative word is completely, and I don't know how to do that, which is why I need a sponsor. That's why I need a sponsor. I've already got God. I've always believed in God. God knew I needed a sponsor. My sponsor, I allowed him to be objective with me and override my subjective nature because I will always give myself a break. It's almost like committing slow period suicide. My subjectivity will always have me going contrary to the message. Does that make sense to you? And so I need a sponsor for when my subjectivity begins to tell me I don't got to do something I need to do. Give myself up completely to this simple program, this one. Now, there's a lot of other programs slipping into our program. And that's why I sponsor people effectively, I hope, to make sure we stay on the AA path. And it's interesting to note where Bill wrote, rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. Did you notice path isn't plural? Took me a while to notice that. Path isn't plural. Now there's about, 150, 200 path journeys in here? We each have our journey, don't we? I don't know what your journey is, but I hope if you don't know what it is, I hope you find it. Whatever makes you go, wow. But in Alcoholics Anonymous, the path is singular. That doesn't mean I can't add things in support of, but never in place of. And I've watched many of us die because they come along and they follow the path and then they start replacing it with other stuff that has nothing to do with our program here. And eventually they're not doing AA at all. And I learned from them. I am not grateful that they go out and use and drink, but I'm grateful I learned from them. It helps keep me on this wonderful path that we're on. Path is not plural. Not only is the path laid out in a big book, but the detours are in the 12 and 12. The detours that we often take away from the path are in the 12 and 12. I encourage you to read that book as well. And then our history book, AA Comes of Age, pointed me to the historical path of Alcoholics Anonymous. And not everybody's interested in that. So let me tell you what makes me alcoholic. After I read those 4 chapters, there's a lot in there, isn't there? But it seemed complicated to me. Bill Wilson then followed that up with one sentence that hooked me, and it's why I'm still here with you folks tonight. He then followed up 4 chapters with one sentence that said everything he said in 4 chapters. And I think he knew if I read that first, it wouldn't have any depth and weight. But the reason that one sentence has depth and weight is because I did read those first 4 chapters. And then I went to meetings and heard you guys sharing like what was in those 4 chapters. And if you don't mind, I want to read that sentence. So on page 44 in the chapter, where are you going? Well, I don't get to get no coffee. Slacker. Oh, quit judging me. Come back, I miss you. I shouldn't do that. Here's that sentence. I'm going to put it in the first person if you don't mind. If, when I honestly want to, do I find I cannot quit drinking entirely? I've lied to so many people about my drinking, but you know who I can't lie to? That man in the glass. You see, I've tried to quit drinking. I bet many of you have too. I've tried to quit drinking. I've taken oath when the United States Navy, which I'm so proud of. I have several distinguishing marks on my record. I plan to make it a career. And then the Navy said, you've got to go to treatment. And I said, for what? They said, you're alcoholic. I said, no, I'm not. I only drink beer. And my commanding officer did everything he could to save my career. He even said, look, just go to Philadelphia. Sit on the bed for 30 days. I don't care if you hear nothing, but you got to do that, and then you come back to the ship and we'll give it another try. And I said, sir, if I go to the Philadelphia treatment program and I sit on that bed, they're going to think I'm an alcoholic. And he looked at me and he says, there's something wrong with you. And I accepted the discharge from the thing I wanted to do more than anything. I finally found a place where I fit. The structure, the discipline, the esprit de corps, I loved it. I just couldn't not drink. We'd land in a port, I'd go drinking, and I'd come back on Monday morning late, and my ship was gone. They don't like that. So rather than go to treatment, I accepted a discharge. And I can't begin to tell you the shame I felt by the time I got home and realized what I did. But I just couldn't believe I was alcoholic. But deep down inside, I wanted to quit. Why would I know I can't quit? But I knew somehow deep down inside I can't quit. So I decided in Alkalogic that if I can't quit, why want to? So I just never wanted to quit. So that's a yes, isn't it? How many of you have taken the John Hopkins 20 questions test? Are you an alcoholic? Go ahead, I'm not going to shame anybody. Okay, if that helps you, I'm happy for you. Dumbest test I've ever seen. Here's why I think that. You got this card with 20 questions, and at the bottom of that card, they give you the quantification of the test. So I'm going to read a header. I mean, if I get a new book, I read the ending. If it's not exciting, why read the whole book? So I read ahead, and it said, if you answer yes to one. Now, I ain't stupid. I might be retarded, but I ain't stupid. Anybody could answer one. I mean, come on, everybody drinks in the morning. Are you kidding me? You might be alcoholic. If you answer yes to 2, you are probably alcoholic. If you answer yes to 3 or more, you are definitely alcoholic. So I don't care what's on their test. I ain't answering 3. Do I give them 1 or 2? I don't want them to think I'm lying. We have 2 questions. I didn't know that. You know, if you turn these statements into questions, here, question 1, if, when I honestly want to, do I find I cannot quit drinking entirely? Yes. Or 2, or if when drinking, do I have little control over the amount I take? That's another yes. This test is tough. But glory be, there's no more questions. And then it says, you are probably alcoholic. I went like this. Whew, that was close. Do you know I found out most of us who died drunk and loaded die between probably and definitely? I cannot tell you where I went from probably to definitely. If it was the first 100 speakers, the first 100 meetings, first 100 stories, the filthy coffee I made when I want to get fired from my coffee commitment. Do you know it's hard to get fired from a commitment? You know, they give the treasury commitment to thieves, for crying out loud. I didn't know what was wrong with me. I didn't know if I was whining my butt or scratching my watch. Somewhere in that first year, I got pulled from probably to definitely, and you know what? I didn't know, but my sponsor did. He knew something was different about me. He knew I'd been drawn from probably to definitely. And that's why we stick to singleness of purpose here. Because that's the truth of AA. Is as I share, as you share, I suppose, we tell our drinking stories so that newcomer alcoholic can go like this. I drank, where are you going? I can't keep doing that. What do you got? Oh, the basket. I apologize. He looked way too cool. What was I saying? What? I'm still on probably and definitely, ain't I? Are there any other probable alcoholics here? How many definitelys? Yeah. If you're in between, keep coming back. Okay. That's what makes me alcoholic. And Dr. Silkworth says an astounding thing. And if you're new, this is for you new guys and gals. What makes me alcoholic is so simple. If when I honestly want to quit, I can't, or if when drinking I have little cold amount I take, I'm probably alcoholic. But so many times I quit drinking for a few weeks and I didn't get better. And do you know when I got sober on November 8, 1977, I had a little honeymoon period they call the pink cloud. My sponsor said, you better pack a pink parachute. They had no idea. When I honestly want to quit, I can't. And once I take a drink, I can't control it. That's baffling to me. Baffling, because I know it's not addictive. Why can't I stop and stay stopped? I know alcohol is not addictive by nature. I know that. So I'm sitting at Larry's Oasis, baffled that I can't just stop and stay stopped to save my marriage, to save my military career, to save jobs. I know I need to stop. I need to control it, but I can't. Does anybody identify with that? And because of that, that's what makes me alcoholic. But there's a dilemma there. See, some of us suffer from what's called alcoholism. And I didn't understand that either. But I have come to understand it about me. I can't speak for you, but if you relate, then I suppose we're on the same page. What is this ism thing? Because you know what Dr. Silkworth said? Some people call it disease. That's the AMA. That's not AA, that's the AMA. AA doesn't say disease. But people coming from treatment say it. And I ain't bagging on treatment, I'm just saying that's where you hear it the most. And then we begin to say it, and then it becomes part of our nomenclature. But nowhere in our literature is disease, except it's mentioned in the fourth step, resentment. From it stems all forms of spiritual disease, all forms of. I didn't understand that either. But it's so important for me to find this information out so that I could relax and be a member of AA and believe that you could do for me what the experts couldn't do for me. And Dr. Silkworth writes in his opinion, do you know, for Dr. Silkworth to be included in our big book has some heavy weight to it. He's the only non-alcoholic allowed in that part of our book. the doctor's opinion. That tells me he has credibility. He was a double board certified surgeon and neurosurgeon, double board certified, the leading expert in alcoholism and drug addiction. And after he gave us his opinion, here's what he said for a solution. It was in the format, or it was in that first reading. Said, the only relief we, the men and women of science and medicine, the only relief we have to suggest is entire abstinence. That's all they've got. That's all they had then, and that's all they have now. And I wish that was my problem, but I haven't had a drink for 46 years and 9 months, one day at a time. So what's this ism thing, you might ask? I needed to know, because I've been diagnosed 21 psychiatric diagnoses. I've been psychiatrically institutionalized 17 times. 14 times in the Watertown Insane Asylum. Medicated to the gills. For 21 different psychiatric diagnoses over those 17 trips. To be fair to myself, I self-signed in 4 times because that's where my girlfriend lived. They nicknamed her Psycho-Sober Sybil. She was a diagnosed sociopath who murdered her family. Was not fit to stand trial, so she spent the rest of her life at the Watertown Insane Asylum. She found out that I was there, a diagnosed psychopath, so she wanted to meet me. Before that, I didn't even know about sex and restraints till I met her. Don't judge me, I was in restraints. You'd self-sign in 4 times too. I promise you. Don't judge me. How can I be alcoholic? Where are you guys going? Count money? Save some for me. Oh wait, that's on, I'm kidding. This is being recorded. Do you know how many times people think we're paid to do this? You know, I didn't want to turn out to be the way I used to be. Here's the ugly part of my talk. You know, we're asked to say what we used to be like, what happened, and what we're like now. What I used to be like was racist to the core. I was indoctrinated into a hate organization in the South when I was 10. I was as racist and bigoted as you can be. In AA. I hated. I came here with a black heart, a dark heart. There's no cure for that, they say. They told me that's who I am. I'm a racist, a bigot, a wife beater, a child abuser, an animal abuser. That was all true. But they said that's what I'm going to be like for the rest of my life. There's no fix for that, they said. I believed it. Being an alcoholic was a step up after I found that out. There's no fix for that. There's no place for me to go. And then I meet you guys. It was hard for me to be in AA. It was. It was easier to be on the psych ward. I didn't know I was alcoholic. But then I found out about this thing after Dr. Silkworth said the only relief they have to suggest is don't drink. How many of us in this room tried to not drink and we got worse mentally and emotionally? I'm not alone, am I? My God, 2/3 of the room. I got worse when I went without drinking because I didn't have a solution. Now, you'll hear people in AA say alcohol wasn't my problem, it was my solution. That confused me. And I'll tell you why. Alcohol was a problem for me. It was a problem. I couldn't stop. I couldn't stay stopped. I did terrible things under the influence. And I ain't talking about just drinking under the influence. I did terrible things. What's wrong with me? And I read a little further into chapter 4, and because my sponsor has an open mind, he had me reading the 12 and 12. And I discovered I have a thing called alcoholism. Clancy called it disease of perception. I have a perception problem. Anybody else? I don't see things the way other people see things. Anybody else? I even hear funny, don't you? Do you know what I say to my sponsees when I make a suggestion? I say, repeat back to me what you just heard me say. Because it rarely don't come back the way I said it. And I don't see things the way other people see things. I don't feel the way other people feel. I'm intense. I have the ism. And I learned in the 12 and 12 what that meant. I have an internal spiritual maladjustment, ISM. And I had that before I ever took a drink. I was maladjusted to life out of the gate. That's what it means to feel different, separate, and alone, is I felt restless, irritable, and discontent out of the gate. And I didn't understand that, and I didn't understand until I read chapter 4 over and over and over again when I realized I'm not agnostic, I believe in God. But I like what Bill wrote in our big book. He said agnostic temperament, agnostic inclination, which means when I get up in the morning, it can happen today. I wake up full of self-doubt, chronic self-doubt, self-centered fear, which you don't hear in AA a lot anymore because almost all things said are prefaced with, in my disease. So we don't hear much AA talk anymore. It isn't in my disease, I was in self-will. We have a solution for self-will, we do not have a solution for disease. If we did, this room would not be big enough to hold all the cancer patients, all the diabetics who would run in here to get a sponsor if this would treat them. And I love the word disease. I love it. I'll tell you why. I hide behind it. When I was in my disease, I beat my wife. Not my fault. I've got a disease. That ain't the way Judge saw it. He saw it as a felony. But I can make everything okay with that nonsense. But I have an internal spiritual maladjustment. I'm maladjusted to the spiritual life. And that's what AA is designed, in my opinion, to resolve, are the resulting conflicts of an internal spiritual maladjustment. And alcohol seems to adjust me. It's an illusion. Does anybody relate to that? You give me a few drinks and I seem adjusted. You see, my bodyguard in high school, who protected us kids in the special class, I'm going to upgrade now. We didn't mix with general population because of the bullies. Tom was my guy, and he took me to the senior dance. I'm the only one out of 11 kids in the special class that got to go to the senior prom. Never mixed in regular school. Tom took me as his date. I don't know what's going on in the gym. They're playing, the Beatles are playing. Balloons everywhere, boys and girls dancing on the floor. And I thought, well, that's interesting. And Tom says to me, I'll be right back. And he left me standing there. I was scared to death. Now I'm in front of the entire gym. And I don't know what to do. Moments later, Tom comes back and he's got his hand tucked inside his jacket. He walks up, pulls it out, and there's a long brown bottle with a red, white, and blue label. Budweiser. He said, here, kid, drink this. It'll make you feel better. I would have drank battery acid for Tom. Patrick's a lot like Tom. If you're being bullied, he'll stick up for you. That's a fact. Tom looked after me. I guzzled that. I didn't know I was a guzzler. You know, in NA, they use the phraseology picking up. In AA, we use the phrase bottoms up. And I went bottoms up, and I guzzled that whole bottle. I let out a big old belch, and I said, Tom, that tastes terrible. I want a Pepsi Cola. He says these immortal words, have another, kid, you'll get used to it. somewhere between 4 and 5 Budweisers, I had a spiritual experience. I went from zero to hero in my mind. I saw this blue-eyed blonde dancing with some loser. My feet are moving all by themselves. I look out on the dance floor and I go up and ask her if I can dance. And her date makes a mistake and leaves her with Lil Wayne. We're dancing. She gave me a sympathy dance. Gal, you know what I'm talking about, girls. She recognized me from the retarded class, so she danced with me. I didn't know that then. I know it now. It was a sympathy dance. But then she liked me. She's danced with me the rest of the night. She gave her date the heave-ho. Found out that night sex meant 2 people. I didn't know that. Been having sex since I was 13. I thought I was good at it. She complicated the entire procedure. That is an unusual reaction to alcohol. But it was so powerful, it embedded itself right here. Right here, that spiritual compulsion. You've heard of the phenomenon of craving. There's an allergy, an unusual, an abnormal reaction to. That's an allergy. So I was having an abnormal reaction to alcohol. It altered my perception of reality. I found out I'm ismatic. I'm maladjusted to life. I was in full flight from reality, and I became an outright mental defective. And that's exactly what Bill Wilson wrote in response to Silkworth's first letter. That's the first time I had hope. I thought maybe AA can help me with this. And that was the day of my first surrender. I thought maybe I can get help. I'm maladjusted to the spiritual life. I'm a churchgoer, I'm a God believer, and I can't stop drinking. So my sponsor did something a lot of people don't do. He decided not to make AA about God. He made AA about AA. And then we learned that AA is not about God. Now you could argue that with all the writings in the big book. What I've learned from Ernest Kurtz, who wrote the book Not God, is that AA is not about God in his opinion. It's of God. Of God. That's not a play on words. You see, my best friend in the world of 25 years is an atheist. Hope you come back. It's a girl. I'm not going to be mean to her. Got a bad enough reputation as it is. What was I saying, Patrick? Thank you. AA's of God. You know what that means? Just come in here and do AA. You'll find God in due time. AA's of God. I believe AA and God are synonymous. I believe that because that's my experience. I believe, you know, Bill wrote something interesting. I love how it works. Do you know in those 3 pages, he condensed the entire program in those 3 pages. He warned us how we're going to relapse. He told us to stay on this path. And then in part B of how it works, he said, probably. So many people errantly drop that word when they say no human power. I wish they would read it as it's written. Probably no human power. And the reason for that is I listen to the neck talkers, if you will. No human power includes your sponsor. No human power includes your sponsor. But that's errant in my opinion. I'll tell you why. Said that probably no human power. He was talking about, you got to read your history. He was talking about the human powers of medicine, psychiatry, psychology, sociology, theology, and pharmacology. Those human powers failed to relieve me of my alcoholism. But wherever 2 or more are gathered, God is in the midst. Is that not a statement? So, when me and Patrick are talking program, we cease being human powers And in that moment, we become spiritual powers. That's powerful. When a sponsor is working with their sponsee along AA's lines, that's not a human power, that's a spiritual power. That's why sponsorship worked for me. I didn't see my sponsor as a human power. Isn't that interesting? The human powers of medicine, psychiatry, psychology, sociology, theology, and pharmacology all failed to relieve him of alcoholism. But God could and would if he were sought. And the seeking is in the 12 steps. The seeking, I was walking around watching you people. Want to know what I was dealing with tonight? I felt your energy. Did you guys feel it when you came in? Did you hear the chatter going on around? People talking about nothing you could hear, but they're having fun doing it? There's a music to AA. Part of it's the laughter. Part of it's the tears. That's the music of AA. But you can see God, if you're looking for it, right here, right now. We hear it in the message. We see it when we see somebody talking to a newcomer, trying to make them welcome. I got the privilege of talking to a few newcomers before I came up here. It's a privilege, by the way. It's even better when they're willing. It's a fascinating thing, this thing called Alcoholics Anonymous. Wow. I want to finish by talking about the 3 phases of 12-step development. I hope I'm not coming across as lecturing. I don't mean to lecture. These are just understandings that I've come to understand about AA. And by Jesus, we need to protect AA from all that crap out there. Because if AA gets watered down, I'm a dead duck. So I stand on the 12 traditions. And I have influencers. You know, when I got sober, I was 17 days sober when my sponsor took me to my first convention. I want you to understand this. I had 4 teeth in my head. 2 on the top, 2 on the bottom, strategically located. So if I opened my mouth in the wind, I whistled. I weighed 146 pounds, and I had bad feet. My sponsor says, I'm going to buy you a new set of clothes and take you to meet some friends of mine this weekend if you don't drink tonight. You see, I was going to drink with my dad, who picked up a drink on Thanksgiving after 9 years of sobriety. And I was going to drink with him. I called my sponsor. He didn't. My sponsor came and got me and drove me around and talked to me about his love of AA. And then he says, if you don't drink tonight, I'll pick you up tomorrow morning and I'll take you to buy you a new set of clothes. It looks like you could use them. And I'm going to take you to meet some friends of mine. He says, you be on that porch at 7 o'clock sharp in the morning, and I'll drive around that corner. If you're not on that porch, I'm going to drive right on by, and I won't give you a second thought. My dad drank the entire 12-pack by himself, went and got a 5th of Jack Daniels. I didn't drink. The hardest night I've ever had. At 7 o'clock, I was on that porch. Barney drove around, stopped, I got in, and then he took me shopping at the Salvation Army. I thought we were going to J.C. Penney. Disco was out at Studio 54. It was in at Salvation Army. They donated all their zoot suits. My sponsor bought me a new suit. It was lime green, double knit polyester leisure suit. The lining was bright yellow with dark green tennis rackets. Then he bought me a shirt. It was brushed polyester. It was really shiny yellow. Had animals around it, had 2 collars down to here, 2 buttons, none were missing. Made me wear a tie with it because he's one of those guys. And the only shoes that would fit me were these black and brown box-toe Oxford platform disco shoes. I went in there 6'3" and came out 6'8", baby. We got out of there for $1.85. He took me to that convention, stood me at the front door, made me a greeter. I was a vision for you. The 6 members of AA that came to that convention was a guy by the name of Chuck C., Norm Alpy, Johnny H., Clancy I. Dottie Shore from Radford, sponsored by Alabama Carruthers, and a guy named Tom Brady Jr. from Charlotte, North Carolina. They carried the message, and they got me. I felt myself saying, me too, for the first time in my life. They got me. They got me well enough to keep me coming till I could learn about my condition. And I now know what my condition is. I have alcoholism, that internal spiritual maladjustment, which is the only thing AA is designed to fix. Chuck C. told me he's only got one problem in life, and that's conscious separation from his loving Father God, the needed power to live. And if he would just connect to God, connect to the source of the power, and act like he knows he's his kid, that conscious separation will go away for a day. And that's his only problem in life. And I'm here to tell you that went way over my head, but it came back around later. By taking the 12 steps, the 12 traditions, and working with alcoholics, I came to believe Chuck was absolutely right, that I only have one problem in life, and that's conscious and unconscious separation from my loving Father God, the needed power to live. But the only way I access that, prayer works for a little while, but I'll tell you what really accesses it, when I'm in here plugged into you. That's the only thing I've ever found. When I come to Alcoholics Anonymous and do the deal, as they say, I'm plugged in. I know I fit in here. You know, I go to meetings out in California. My sponsor taught me this, and I got one more thing I want to say. He told me, go where people are smarter than you. He says, and that shouldn't be hard to find. He said, go where people are better off than you. And he said, I didn't say better than you, better off than you. Go to those meetings where you don't think you fit in, and you will be educated. You will learn. And that's exactly what I do. I go to meetings out there where millionaires are. Rest assured I'm not. I learn from them, smart people, people who know what they're doing with money and business and things. And they taught me how to be self-supporting through my own contributions, how to bring that into AA, how to quit being a whiner, how to quit being a complainer, how to take a positive outlook on life. Well, if you had my problems, you'd be positively miserable. He said that's a failing score for today. Lastly, I want to talk about the 3 phases of 12-step development. I've got to say it in 4 minutes. I think it's important to know where we are. When I had the pleasure of Chuck working with me as a mentor, I found about the 3 phases of 12-step development: desperation, restoration, transformation. Steps 1, 2, and 3 are the desperation steps, the gift of desperation. If it wasn't for desperation, I would have never submitted to you people. I was desperate, and you took advantage of my desperation. You got me taking commitments while I was desperate. You didn't want to wait till I waned. I hate that term. My name's Wayne. Wayne. Waned means to lessen. I hate that, but they got me while I was desperate. They didn't relieve me of my desperation by hugging me to death. They took advantage of my desperation to get me to do things I didn't believe in, and it worked. I would never have taken step 3 if I wasn't desperate. My first stab at step 3 was utter desperation. And steps 4 through 9 are the restoration phase. I want to tell you folks what I've learned about that. There's one in the big book and one in the 12 and 12. Being restored to sadness and soundness of mind where alcohol is concerned. I am absolutely convinced I cannot drink alcohol in any form at all, in any amount, safely. I'm convinced of that. Part 1. Part 2, to be restored to sanity where life is concerned. To be restored to full citizenship. To not cross the street to avoid somebody. To pay my debts. Eric, to clean up my 8th step and my 9th step. To be able to look the world in the eye and to feel self-respect because God loves me the way I am. Steps 4 through 9, that's why they're so important, newcomer. They restore us to sanity where alcohol is concerned and where the family's concerned, where life is concerned. And then that sets us up for phase 3 to be rocketed into the 4th dimension. And that's the transformation phase, steps 10, 11, and 12. And I like how Bill wrote in the 12 and 12, having worked the first 9 steps. And that's the last time he used the word work that I can find. We worked the first 9 steps. Now we are prepared. We're going to practice steps 10, 11, and 12 as a way of life. And if we do that, the obsession to drink will be expelled. So I practice steps 10, 11, and 12 like my life depends on it. And I do it to the best of my human ability. One day, I don't do it perfectly. Me and Patrick both failed at sainthood completely. I'm still being transformed right now. I appreciate your invite to have me come here, Patrick, and all of your graciousness and the hospitality. And I want to say that the idea that I get to come and try to be an example, an expression of Alcoholics Anonymous is so humbling to me. And I hope if I've annoyed you, keep coming back. If something I said annoyed you, you might want to look at that. You might be wrong. I might be wrong. I'll look at it. But you know what? Alcoholics Anonymous is not wrong if you're an alcoholic. And I have alcoholism. But as it is right now, in my position right here, right now, in this moment I'm in, I'm not maladjusted to life. And I've got these adjusters. These adjusters that I get to practice on a daily basis, the 11th step, the 3rd step prayer, 7th step prayer, the Serenity prayer, the prayer of St. Francis. I got those tools to help adjust me in a moment of strife. I've got phone call numbers. I've got my sponsor to call. I've got my sponsees to call, annoy them when I'm annoyed. I love getting even with them like that. Taking commitments at AA. I go to 6 speaker meetings a week. I have a commitment at each one of those commitments, at each one of those meetings. With 46 years, I've got a commitment at every meeting I go to at the speaker meetings. And then I come do what I'm asked to do. And AA, is somebody clapping to get me to shut up? I'm almost done. Oh, no, I am done. Thanks for the invite.